A ruthless millionaire invited his maid to a grand luxury party, just to humiliate her. But when she arrived, she did something that left the entire room speechless. But before we dive into the story, drop a comment below about where you're watching from. Enjoy the journey. Generations of wealth had hardened Emily's father, a man with no remorse. He had dismantled businesses, sold off assets, and left dozens of loyal employees jobless without a second thought. One such victim, the founder of a family business that had thrived for 3 generations, had suffered a fatal heart attack upon hearing the news of his company's demise. For Emily's father, each million-dollar deal, each ruthless victory, was a testament to the philosophy he had ingrained in his daughter. Success was only for those willing to be merciless. Now, Emily stood at the pinnacle of that empire, surrounded by wealth beyond imagination. Yet, the thrill of it all had faded. Designer goods, extravagant vacations, everything had become dull, lifeless. But there was one thing that still stirred something inside her: power. The ability to bend people to her will, to shape their fates with a snap of her fingers. And Emma, that infuriatingly beautiful, humble, hard-working girl, she was the perfect target. Emily needed this. This little act of cruelty, this perfectly planned humiliation, would reignite the excitement she craved. It wasn't just about Emma. It was about proving to herself and others that she was still the master of manipulation. As she stood by the window, watching the golden hues of the sunset cast a glow over the garden, she spotted Emma diligently tending to the flowers. For the briefest moment, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Was this really necessary? What would she truly gain from crushing someone so kind, so innocent? But then, just as quickly as the thought had come, she dismissed it. I hate people more beautiful than me. A dangerous smirk spread across Emily's face as she turned away. The game was set, and the pieces were in motion. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Chloe, ever efficient, had outdone herself. The dress she had chosen for Emma was a disaster, a garish green monstrosity, 2 sizes too big, with an absurdly puffed-out skirt that looked like something out of a bad stage play. It was the perfect outfit to turn Emma into the laughingstock of the night. When Chloe presented it, Emily had laughed, delighted. "Brilliant," she said, running her fingers over the hideous fabric. "This is exactly what I had in mind." The night of the party arrived, a night of light, glamour, and excess. The Grand Hotel, perched on cliffs overlooking the ocean, had been transformed into an oasis of luxury. Massive floral arrangements flanked the entrance. A red carpet stretched endlessly, and security guards in black suits stood like statues. Luxury cars and limited-edition sports models glided up one by one, carrying the city's elite, CEOs, politicians, and their privileged heirs. Inside a sleek Rolls-Royce, Emily adjusted the bow on her custom-made dress, an expectant smile playing on her lips. Next to her, Emma sat stiffly, her hands nervously clutching the garish green fabric of her ill-fitting dress. She looked painfully out of place, just as Emily had intended. Emily turned to her, her voice dripping with artificial sweeteners. "Remember, Emma," she said, pausing just long enough to let the moment stretch unbearably. Then, with a smirk, she added, "Tonight is your big moment." The sun blazed mercilessly, making the air shimmer with heat as Emily stepped onto the garden path. The heat slapped her face, a harsh reminder of why she preferred the cool comfort of air conditioning. She moved forward with slow, deliberate steps, her designer heels barely making a sound on the stone pathway. Ahead, Emma was bent over a flower bed, hands deep in the soil, her simple cotton dress stained with dirt. As Emily approached, Emma straightened, wiping her brow with a dainty handkerchief. "Good afternoon, Miss Emily," Emma greeted, her smile warm and genuine, untouched by exhaustion. That smile made Emily uncomfortable. How could someone with such a lowly existence be so content? Emily tilted her head, her own smile practiced and polished to perfection. "Emma, my dear friend," she purred, lacing her voice with a silky warmth. "I've been watching your work, and I must say, I'm very impressed." Emma's eyes lit up at the compliment, and Emily had to suppress the urge to roll her own. It's so easy to manipulate the simple-minded. "Thank you, Miss Emily," Emma said, pride evident in her tone. I always do my best to keep everything just right. Emily nodded as if in deep approval. And that is exactly why, Emma. I want to reward you for your dedication. Emma blinked in surprise. In all her years working for the Emily family, she had never received anything beyond her paycheck, and perhaps a small Christmas bonus. A reward, miss? She asked, curiosity evident in her voice. Emily took a slow, measured breath, savoring her next words like a fine wine. Yes, every year I host the most exclusive birthday party in the city. The wealthiest, most powerful people gather under my roof. She watched as Emma listened with wide, uncertain eyes. And this year, I want you to attend as my guest of honor. Emma's hands froze mid-motion. Me? At your party? Yes, Emily said smoothly, enjoying the stunned disbelief spreading across Emma's face. Think of it as a chance to experience the world beyond this garden. Emma hesitated, looking down at her dirt-streaked hands. But, miss, I have nothing to wear. I wouldn't know how to act. Emily waved a hand dismissively. That's not your concern. I'll take care of everything. A dress, accessories, shoes. You will look just perfect. So, what do you say? Will you accept my invitation? There was a pause, a brief flicker of doubt in Emma's expression. But the temptation of experiencing something so far removed from her daily life quickly outweighed her suspicion. Her lips quivered before curving into a hesitant, yet delighted smile. It would be an honor, Miss Emily. Thank you. Emily laid a hand on her shoulder, her touch deceptively gentle. The pleasure is mine, Emma. The party is this Saturday. Be ready. As Emily walked away, she smirked to herself. This was going to be a night to remember. The grand chandelier glistened above the ballroom, its crystals catching the golden light like 1,000 stars. A soft hum of chatter filled the air, punctuated by bursts of laughter from finely dressed guests. Emily stood at the entrance, watching with hidden amusement as Emma stepped through the doors. The once humble maid was now clad in a lavish gown, its deep sapphire hue contrasting against her fair skin. Yet, despite the elegance of her dress, Emma's posture was stiff, her movements careful, as if she feared breaking something fragile. Ah, there she is, Emily announced dramatically, ensuring all eyes turned to Emma. Everyone, meet my special guest tonight, Emma, my maid. Silence crashed over the room. The once warm atmosphere turned frigid. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some guests exchanged amused glances, others simply stared. Emma, realizing the weight of those stares, felt her breath hitch. Her fingers clenched at her gown as she fought the urge to flee. Then a slow, deliberate clap echoed across the hall. Emily turned sharply, expecting to see one of her usual sycophants playing along. But instead, she saw Alfred Sinclair, the legendary investor and a close friend of her family, walking toward Emma, his expression unreadable. Emma, Alfred said, stepping forward. It is an honor to finally meet you. Confusion spread through Emily like an ink stain. Finally? What does he mean by that? Emma, equally shocked, hesitated before shaking his outstretched hand. The honor is mine, Mr. Sinclair. A new murmur surged through the crowd, growing louder. Then, as if a dam had broken, voices erupted. Is she really the unknown angel? It can't be. The one who donated millions in secret. A legend, standing right here among us. Emily felt the ground tilt beneath her. What is going on? She whispered. Her gaze darted between Emma and Alfred, desperately searching for answers. Alfred turned to the crowd, his voice commanding attention. For years, the world has speculated about the identity of the unknown angel, the mysterious philanthropist funding charities across the nation. Tonight, we finally met her. He gestured toward Emma. Emma isn't just a maid. She was once one of the top entrepreneurs in this country. But instead of chasing wealth, she chose to live simply and dedicate her fortune to those in need. Gasps filled the room. Eyes that had once looked at Emma with disdain now gazed at her with admiration, even reverence. Emma took a steady breath, her voice stronger than it had been all night. True wealth, she said, isn't measured in riches, but in the lives we change. Emily, still reeling, took a step back. Her perfectly orchestrated humiliation had crumbled into dust. leaving her standing in the wreckage of her own pettiness. She was supposed to be the fool tonight, not me. As the crowd surged toward Emma, eager to meet the woman behind the legend, Emily shrank into the shadows. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the center of attention. She was just a footnote in someone else's story. And for the first time, she realized how small that felt. That night, Emily sat alone in her grand bedroom, staring at her reflection. The girl in the mirror looked the same, but inside, something had cracked. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to change. And so, when the morning sun rose, Emily knocked on Emma's door. "May I help you with today's work?" she asked, her voice softer than before. Emma studied her for a long moment before smiling. "Of course, Miss Emily. There's always work to be done." And together, they began anew. Emily finally allowed the malicious laughter she had been holding in to burst across her face. The game had begun, and she could already taste victory. Back in the cool comfort of her mansion, Emily headed straight for her private bar, needing another drink to celebrate the start of her perfect plan. While pouring herself a generous glass of wine, her mind raced, playing out every humiliating detail she had orchestrated for Emma. This would be the event of the year, a spectacle no one would forget. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. After a few seconds, a familiar voice answered. "Chloe," Emily said, not bothering with a greeting. "I need you to do something for me. Find a dress for my maid. It has to stand out, something completely inappropriate. Make sure it's at least 3 sizes too big." There was a moment of silence on the other end, as if Chloe, her personal assistant, was trying to make sense of the strange request. "Of course, Miss Emily," Chloe finally replied. "Any preferences for color or style?" Emily smirked. "Surprise me, Chloe. Just make sure it's something that will have everyone staring, for all the wrong reasons." She hung up without waiting for a response. Chloe would understand. She always did, which was why she was invaluable, capable of carrying out even the most bizarre tasks without asking inconvenient questions. With the plan now in motion, Emily allowed herself to imagine how the gala would unfold. She pictured Emma walking in, awkward and out of place, wearing a ridiculous outfit that would make her stand out like a sore thumb. The confused stares, the stifled laughter, the whispered comments behind champagne glasses. And at the center of it all would be Emily, the architect of this cruel comedy. People would talk about this night for weeks, maybe months. "Do you remember when Emily brought her maid to the party?" They would whisper, eyes gleaming with amusement. "And that dress. Oh, the poor thing." But this was more than just a mean-spirited prank. For Emily, this was a statement, a reminder to everyone at the party of who she truly was. Not just a wealthy heiress, but someone capable of manipulating, controlling, and crafting a spectacle at will. As she sipped her wine, Emily reflected on the path that had led her here. Born into wealth, she had been raised by parents who believed power was everything. Their rise in the business world had been marked by shrewdness, determination, and an utter lack of ethics. She remembered her father's favorite story, his first big break at just 26, when he had stolen a promising startup's idea, presented it as his own, and secured backing from key investors. The original founder, a bright but naive young man, had been unable to prove the theft and had ended up working in an electronics store, his dreams shattered. Then there was the hostile takeover of a family business that had thrived for 3 generations. Emily had been just a child then, watching from the sidelines as her father crushed the opposition with ruthless efficiency. The family that once owned the company was left penniless, reduced to begging for scraps in a world they no longer belonged to. Cruelty, Emily had learned, was not just a necessity, it was an art. And tonight, at the gala, she will be the artist. The venue was a breathtaking hall, decorated with cascading crystal chandeliers and a sea of elegantly dressed guests sipping on the finest champagne. The air buzzed with laughter, conversation, and the soft notes of a grand piano. Emily stood near the entrance, awaiting Emma's arrival. When the maid finally walked in, the room seemed to pause for a fraction of a second. Emma's dress was an absolute disaster. It was oversized, swallowing her small frame. The material was gaudy, an explosion of clashing colors that made her look like she had walked out of a carnival instead of a high society gala. The moment she stepped into the light, the murmurs began. Emily felt the rush of triumph. But then, something unexpected happened. Emma didn't shrink away. She didn't stammer or rush to hide. Instead, she smiled, a warm, radiant smile that seemed to push back against the snickers and judgment surrounding her. She walked with confidence, her head held high, as if she belonged there more than anyone else in the room. And then, the whispers changed. "Isn't that Emma?" One of the guests murmured. "Emma, you mean the unknown philanthropist?" Emily's stomach dropped. "What?" Alfred, one of the most respected businessmen in the room, suddenly stepped forward, taking hold of the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice commanding attention, "many of you have heard of the unknown angel, the mysterious benefactor who has donated millions to charities in secret. For years, we speculated about their identity, but tonight, we finally met her." He turned toward Emma. Emma isn't just a maid. A few years ago, she was one of the top young entrepreneurs in the country, named among the top 5 innovators of her time. But she chose to step away from that life, dedicating herself to helping others while living simply, doing what she loves. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Executives, stars, and philanthropists who had earlier sneered at her now looked at her with admiration, eager to meet the legend. Emily felt the world spin around her. Her perfect plan had crumbled in an instant. Worse, she had become the fool, the villain of the story. Emma turned to her with a kind, knowing smile. "I suppose you're wondering why I accepted your invitation, knowing your intentions." Emily could barely meet her gaze. I don't understand. Why work as a maid when you have so much money? Why put up with all this?" Emma's smile didn't waver. "Because honest work, no matter what it is, has dignity. Because caring for people, even those who don't see my worth, keeps me grounded. And because sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places." Emily felt something crack inside her. For the first time in her life, she questioned everything she had ever known. The guests left that night with a new perspective. The story of the millionaire maid would spread like wildfire, inspiring others to reconsider their priorities. As for Emily, her lesson had only just begun. Generations of wealth had hardened Emily's father, a man with no remorse. He had dismantled businesses, sold off assets, and left dozens of loyal employees jobless without a second thought. One such victim, the founder of a family business that had thrived for 3 generations, had suffered a fatal heart attack upon hearing the news of his company's demise. For Emily's father, each million-dollar deal, each ruthless victory, was a testament to the philosophy he had ingrained in his daughter. Success was only for those willing to be merciless. Now, Emily stood at the pinnacle of that empire, surrounded by wealth beyond imagination. Yet, the thrill of it all had faded. Designer goods, extravagant vacations, everything had become dull, lifeless. But there was one thing that still stirred. Something inside her power, the ability to bend people to her will, to shape their fates with a snap of her fingers. And Emma, that infuriatingly beautiful, humble, hard-working girl. She was the perfect target. Emily needed this. This little act of cruelty, this perfectly planned humiliation, would reignite the excitement she craved. It wasn't just about Emma. It was about proving to herself and others that she was still the master of manipulation. As she stood by the window, watching the golden hues of the sunset cast a glow over the garden, she spotted Emma diligently tending to the flowers. For the briefest moment, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Was this really necessary? What would she truly gain from crushing someone so kind, so innocent? But then, just as quickly as the thought had come, she dismissed it. "I hate people more beautiful than me." A dangerous smirk spread across Emily's face as she turned away. The game was set, and the pieces were in motion. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Chloe, ever efficient, had outdone herself. The dress she had chosen for Emma was a disaster, a garish green monstrosity, 2 sizes too big, with an absurdly puffed-out skirt that looked like something out of a bad stage play. It was the perfect outfit to turn Emma into the laughingstock of the night. When Chloe presented it, Emily had laughed, delighted. "Brilliant," she said, running her fingers over the hideous fabric. This is exactly what I had in mind. The night of the party arrived. A night of light, glamour, and excess. The Grand Hotel, perched on cliffs overlooking the ocean, had been transformed into an oasis of luxury. Massive floral arrangements flanked the entrance. A red carpet stretched endlessly, and security guards in black suits stood like statues. Luxury cars and limited edition sports models glided up one by one, carrying the city's elite, CEOs, politicians, and their privileged heirs. Inside a sleek Rolls-Royce, Emily adjusted the bow on her custom-made dress, an expectant smile playing on her lips. Next to her, Emma sat stiffly, her hands nervously clutching the garish green fabric of her ill-fitting dress. She looked painfully out of place, just as Emily had intended. Emily turned to her, her voice dripping with artificial sweeteners. "Remember, Emma," she said, pausing just long enough to let the moment stretch unbearably. Then, with a smirk, she added, "Tonight is your big moment." The heat slapped Emily's face the moment she stepped out onto the terrace, a stark contrast to the cool, luxurious embrace of her mansion. She preferred air conditioning and the scent of expensive perfumes, not the scent of freshly tilled earth and sun-kissed sweat. Yet here she was, stepping into the blazing sun, her designer heels clicking against the marble steps leading down to the manicured garden. Emma, the ever-diligent maid, was trimming the hedges, her simple cotton dress clinging to her form, damp with effort. She wiped her brow with a dainty handkerchief, oblivious to the sharp eyes that studied her. "Good afternoon, Miss Emily," Emma greeted with a smile so genuine it almost made Emily uncomfortable. Almost. Emily tilted her head slightly, lips curling into an imitation of warmth. "Emma, my dear friend," she began, her voice honeyed with practiced grace. "I've been watching you work, and I must say, I'm impressed." Emma's eyes lit up, a flicker of pride dancing in them. Emily had to fight the urge to roll her own. "It's so easy to manipulate the simple-minded," she thought. "Thank you, Miss Emily. I always do my best to keep everything just as you like it." Emily nodded approvingly, her mind already setting the trap. "That's why I want to do something special for you." Emma blinked in surprise. "Special?" "Yes," Emily continued, savoring every word as if sipping a rare vintage wine. "You see, my birthday is coming up, and it's the event of the year. The wealthiest, most influential people will be there, and I want you to come with me." Emma's breath hitched. "Me? To your party?" She looked down at her calloused hands, at the dirt on her dress. "Miss Emily, I wouldn't know how to act around such people. I have nothing to wear." Emily waved her hand dismissively. "Don't worry about that. I'll take care of everything. A makeover, a dress, everything fit for a guest of honor." A hesitant flicker of doubt crossed Emma's face. Something felt off, but the chance to step into a world so far removed from her own, even for one night, was too tempting to refuse. "It would be an honor, Miss Emily," Emma finally said, her smile radiant. "Thank you for thinking of me." Emily placed a hand on Emma's shoulder, sealing the deal with a touch. "The pleasure is mine, Emma. You deserve it." As Emily walked back toward her mansion, her lips curled into a smirk. Emma had no idea what she had just agreed to. That evening, Emily reclined in her private lounge, sipping a glass of red wine as she made a call. "Chloe," she said without preamble, "I need you to find a dress for my maid. Something extravagant. Something ridiculous." There was a pause on the other end. "Miss Emily, what kind of ridiculous?" Emily laughed softly. "Surprise me. Just make sure it's something that will have everyone staring for all the wrong reasons." The night of the party arrived in a storm of flashing cameras and the hum of luxury engines rolling up to the Grand Hotel perched on the cliffs. The venue was a glowing beacon of excess, chandeliers glittering like captured starlight, the scent of money and power thick in the air. Inside the backseat of her Rolls-Royce, Emily adjusted her silk gown, watching Emma from the corner of her eye. The maid was practically swallowed by the absurdly puffed-out green dress Chloe had selected, 2 sizes too big, its frills overwhelming her slight frame. A masterpiece of humiliation. "Remember, Emma," Emily cooed with false sweetness. "Tonight, you're my special guest. Just smile and nod." Emma fidgeted nervously. "Thank you again, Miss Emily. I promise I won't let you down." Emily had to bite the inside of her cheek to suppress her laughter. "Oh, Emma, you're about to be the highlight of the night, just not in the way you think." As the car came to a stop, Emily stepped out first, greeting the sea of photographers with a dazzling smile. Then, in a dramatic gesture, she extended a hand to Emma. The moment Emma emerged, there was a beat of silence. Then the camera flashes exploded, frantic and relentless. Emma, blinded by the attention, stumbled slightly. Emily tightened her grip, not to steady Emma, but to ensure everyone saw exactly what she wanted them to see. "Miss Emily, who's your companion?" a reporter called out. Emily beamed. "This is Emma, my maid. I thought it would be fun to bring someone who really knows how to make things grow. Don't you all agree?" The crowd giggled, some openly, some behind champagne glasses. Emma, still oblivious, smiled nervously. Inside, the contrast between Emma and the lavish surroundings was stark. Every movement, every hesitant glance of hers was another stroke in the masterpiece of embarrassment Emily had painted. The elite guest started, whispering behind jeweled fingers. "Emily," called a familiar voice. James, the CEO of a rising tech empire, raised his glass in greeting. "We thought you'd miss the fun." "Never," Emily purred. She turned to Emma, eyes gleaming. "Let me introduce you. Everyone meet Emma, my maid." Silence rippled through the crowd, like a stone cast in still water. Then, just as Emily anticipated, the first muffled snicker broke through. Emma's smile faltered. She wasn't stupid. She could sense it now. The sharp edges beneath Emily's polished words, the way the gazes around her weren't of admiration but amusement. Something cold gripped her heart. "Miss Emily," she whispered, but the words stuck to her throat. Emily merely sipped her champagne, watching the pieces of her plan fall perfectly into place. But what she didn't see, what she never expected, was the moment everything would change. Because Emma was about to do something that would shake Emily's world to its core. Emily finally allowed the malicious laughter she had been holding back to spill across her lips. The game had begun, and she could already taste victory. Back in the cool, sophisticated ambience of her lavish penthouse, she poured herself a glass of wine, the deep crimson liquid swirling like the twisted thoughts in her mind. Tonight would be a spectacle, a performance so cruel, so deliciously calculated, that it would cement her place as the undisputed queen of high society's cold-hearted elite. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. It rang twice before a voice answered on the other end. "Chloe," Emily said, not bothering with a greeting. "I need you to do something for me." "Of course, Miss Emily." Chloe's voice was smooth, ever efficient. "I want you to find a dress for my maid," Emily continued, twirling the stem of her glass between her fingers. "It has to stand out. The less appropriate, the better. Make sure it's way too big." A pause. Then, "Do you have any preferences for color or style?" Emily smiled to herself. "Surprise me, Chloe. Just make sure it turns heads, for all the wrong reasons." She hung up without waiting for a response. Chloe would understand. She always did. It was what made her invaluable, a quiet, unquestioning enabler of Emily's whims. The following days were a whirlwind of preparations. Chloe, true to her reputation, delivered spectacularly. The dress was an eyesore, a garish green monstrosity with an absurdly puffed-out skirt, 2 sizes too big, as if plucked from a bad theater production. The very sight of it sent Emily into peals of laughter. "This is perfect," she purred, holding the fabric between her fingers. "Tonight is going to be unforgettable." The night of the party arrived. The city shimmered under golden lights, and the Grand Oceana Hotel, perched on cliffs overlooking the restless ocean, was transformed into a kingdom of decadence. A red carpet stretched before its towering entrance, where photographers, reporters, and high society elites gathered in glittering splendor. Inside her Rolls-Royce, Emily adjusted the silk bow on her designer gown, a smirk playing at her lips. Next to her sat Emma, the unsuspecting lamb, being led to the slaughter. The maid's hands were folded tightly in her lap, her knuckles white against her skin. "Remember, Emma," Emily cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Tonight, you're my special guest. Just smile and nod, okay?" Emma, ever the grateful servant, nodded earnestly. "Thank you again, Miss Emily. I promise I won't let you down." Emily nearly choked on her amusement. Oh, sweet, naive Emma. If only you knew. The Rolls-Royce purred to a stop, and a valet swung the door open. Emily stepped out first, a picture of effortless grace. Then, with theatrical flair, she extended a hand to Emma. The moment Emma emerged, the world seemed to pause. Then, in an instant, the cameras erupted in a frenzy of flashes. A stunned silence fell over the crowd. The contrast between Emily's breathtaking elegance and Emma's hideous, ill-fitting gown was jarring. Then the whispers began. Then the laughter. Inside, the grand ballroom was a spectacle of wealth. Gilded chandeliers, ice sculptures, champagne towers. Power and privilege dripped from every corner. Emily, with Emma in tow, basked in the stares, the not-so-hidden smirks, the hushed exchanges behind manicured hands. At the bar, a familiar voice called out, "Emily, we thought you'd miss all the fun." James, a venture capitalist with a razor-sharp tongue, raised his glass in greeting. Next to him stood Esteban, a tech magnate known for his ruthless business acumen. Emily flashed a brilliant smile. "I wouldn't dream of it." With an exaggerated flourish, she turned to Emma. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce my companion for the evening. This is Emma, my maid." A beat of silence. Then, barely concealed amusement. "Your maid," Esteban echoed, sipping his scotch. "That's unconventional." "I thought it would be refreshing," Emily said smoothly. "You know, to bring someone truly interesting." A round of polite chuckles rippled through the group. Emma, oblivious to the underlying cruelty, smiled nervously. James leaned forward, eyes glinting with mischief. "Tell me, Emma, what do you think of colonizing Mars?" Emma's brows knitted together. Well, sir, I suppose if they're going to Mars, they'll need maids, right?" A moment of stunned silence, then roaring laughter. Some guests doubled over. Others clapped. Emily reveled in it. This was exactly what she had envisioned. As the evening wore on, Emma became the unintentional court jester, parading from one conversation to another, each question more ridiculous than the last. The mockery became bolder, the laughter louder. Emma excused herself at one point, murmuring something about the restroom. Emily barely noticed, too intoxicated by the adoration of her peers. Inside the opulent restroom, Emma gripped the marble sink, breathing heavily. The mirror reflected a woman who barely recognized herself, a woman who had been played for a fool. The whispers, the laughter, the humiliating stares. Tears burned at the edges of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. With a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders and smoothed her dress. She may have been the joke of the evening, but she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. As she stepped out of the restroom, determination hardened in her eyes. If Emily thought she had won tonight, she was sorely mistaken, because the real game had just begun. Generations ago, Emily's father built an empire, not with hard work and ethics, but with ruthless ambition. He dismantled companies, crushed competitors, and left countless families jobless without a shred of remorse. One such family had built their business from nothing, only to watch it be destroyed overnight. The patriarch, unable to bear the shock, suffered a fatal heart attack. And yet, each victory, each million-dollar deal, each headline in a business magazine, only fed Emily's father's greed. Emily had grown up watching her father win at any cost. The lesson was clear. Kindness was for the weak, and power belonged to those willing to take it. Now she stood at the pinnacle of success, surrounded by unimaginable wealth. Yet it all felt tasteless. The designer clothes, the exotic vacations, the lavish parties. Nothing thrilled her anymore. But tonight, she had found a new kind of entertainment. A cruel joke at the expense of an unsuspecting girl named Emma. Emma, the young and kind-hearted maid who worked in Emily's mansion, was the perfect target. She was simple, naive, and most of all, beautiful, too beautiful. That was reason enough for Emily to hate her. Standing by her bedroom window, Emily watched as Emma worked in the garden below, oblivious to the trap set for her. For a fleeting second, doubt crept into Emily's mind. Was this really necessary? What did she truly gain from humiliating someone who had never wronged her? But just as quickly, She brushed the thought aside, her lips curling into a dangerous smirk. She needed this. The night of the party arrived, bringing with it an air of luxury and exclusivity. The venue was a grand 5-star hotel perched on the edge of a cliff, overlooking the ocean. Every detail was meticulously designed for opulence, the entrance lined with rare orchids, a red carpet stretching endlessly, and security guards standing like statues. Luxury cars, each one more impressive than the last, pulled up, dropping off socialites, celebrities, and heirs to multi-billion-dollar fortunes. Inside her Rolls-Royce, Emily adjusted the bow of her designer gown and flashed a practiced smile. Next to her sat Emma, painfully out of place in the garish green dress Chloe had picked out, 2 sizes too big, with absurd puff sleeves that made her look like a walking joke. Emily leaned in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Remember, Emma, tonight you're my special guest. If you don't understand something, just smile and nod." Emma's sweaty hands clenched on her lap. "Thank you, Miss Emily. I promise I won't let you down." Emily had to bite her lip to stop herself from laughing. The only way Emma wouldn't disappoint her was if she played her role perfectly, the role of an unknowing fool. The Rolls-Royce pulled up to the entrance, and a valet quickly opened the door. Emily stepped out first, instantly bathed in the glow of flashing cameras. She smiled at the photographers, reveling in the attention. Then, with exaggerated grace, she turned and extended her hand to Emma. The moment Emma stepped out, the effect was exactly as Emily had imagined. The camera flashes hesitated for a fraction of a second, as if the photographers couldn't believe what they were seeing, before resuming with a frenzy. Emma, blinded by the flashes, stumbled slightly, and Emily tightened her grip on the girl's hand, making sure the cameras captured every awkward moment. "Miss Emily, who's your companion?" a reporter called. Emily turned, her smile razor-sharp. "Oh, this is Emma, my maid. I thought it would be fun to bring someone who really knows how to make things grow." Laughter rippled through the crowd, polite at first, then more amused as they grasped the joke. Emma, oblivious to the hidden insult, smiled awkwardly, trying her best to fit in. Inside the grand ballroom, the contrast between Emma's world and Emily's became painfully clear. Towering crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, illuminating guests draped in designer couture. Waiters weaved through the crowd carrying trays of champagne, while businessmen discussed billion-dollar deals as casually as weekend plans. Emma shrank under the weight of stares, feeling more like a spectacle than a guest. "Miss Emily," she whispered, eyes darting nervously, "I don't think I belong here." Emily placed a hand on Emma's back and pushed her forward. "Nonsense, Emma. Let me introduce you to some friends." She led Emma toward a group of powerful executives seated near the bar. Among them was James, the CEO of a promising tech startup, and Esteban, a renowned venture capitalist. James raised his glass. "Emily, we thought you were going to miss all the fun." "Never," Emily replied smoothly. "And tonight, I brought someone special. Meet Emma, my maid." A hush fell over the group, followed by forced laughter. "Your maid," Esteban repeated, amused. "How unexpected." James smirked. "Tell me, Emma, what do you think about colonizing Mars?" Emma blinked. I don't know much about that, sir. But if they're going to Mars, they'll need good maids, right?" The laughter this time was genuine, cruel but real. Emily felt the eyes of the room on them, soaking in the humiliation written all over Emma's face. Her plan was unfolding flawlessly. As the night progressed, the alcohol flowed, and the jabs at Emma became more blatant. She was a walking joke, passed around from group to group like a party trick. At one point, Emma excused herself to the restroom. Emily watched her go, noticing the way her shoulders slumped and her steps faltered. A flicker of something pity touched Emily's heart, but before she could dwell on it, a familiar voice called her name. "Emily." She turned to find Paul, her father's biggest rival. Unlike her father, Paul was known for his kindness, and worst of all, he was genuinely respected by his employees. "Paul," Emily greeted him with a forced smile. "Enjoying the party?" Paul's sharp eyes scanned her face. "I must say, your choice of a guest is interesting." Emily tilted her head. "I like to surprise people." Paul didn't smile. Is that what this is? A surprise? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're humiliating a girl who doesn't understand why she's here. Emily's smile wavered. Don't be dramatic, Uncle Paul. I'm giving Emma an experience she'd never have otherwise. Paul's expression darkened. Generosity isn't cruelty wrapped in a pretty bow, Emily. Before she could respond, a sudden murmur swept through the ballroom. All heads turned toward the entrance, where an imposing figure had arrived. Alfred, the legendary investor and philanthropist. A man so powerful that even industry giants bowed to him, and he was walking straight toward them. Emily swallowed hard, for the first time that night, feeling something unexpected. Unease. A fake sweetness tonight. You're my special guest. Don't worry if you don't understand everything that's said. Just smile and nod. Emma's sweaty hands clenched on her lap as she nodded nervously. Thank you again for this opportunity, Miss Emily. I promise I won't let you down. Emily suppressed a giggle. Emma had no idea that the only way not to disappoint her tonight was to become the joke of the evening. The Rolls-Royce glided to a smooth stop in front of the grand entrance. A valet swiftly opened the door, and Emily stepped out first, her practiced smile flashing under the bright lights of the paparazzi's cameras. With a dramatic gesture, she extended her hand to Emma, who hesitated before stepping out. For a fleeting second, the cameras went still, as if the photographers were momentarily stunned by what they were seeing. Then, the frenzy resumed. Flashes burst through the night, capturing the bewildered young woman in her borrowed, ill-fitting dress. Emma blinked against the blinding lights, clearly overwhelmed by the attention. Her foot wobbled as she stepped onto the red carpet, and Emily tightened her grip, not in reassurance, but to ensure that every camera caught Emma's awkward stumble. Miss Emily, who's your companion tonight? A reporter called out. Emily's lips curled in amusement, the moment she had been waiting for. This is Emma, she announced, her voice carrying a deceptive sweetness. My maid. I thought it would be fun to bring someone who really knows how to make things grow. Don't you all agree? Laughter rippled through the crowd. Some chuckled politely, others outright snickered. Emma, oblivious to the double meaning of Emily's words, forced a timid smile as she was paraded down the red carpet, the amused stares and hushed whispers of the elite burning into her skin. Inside the grand ballroom, the contrast between Emma's world and this glittering paradise became even more evident. Crystal chandeliers bathed the marble floors in golden light, reflecting off glasses of expensive champagne. Women floated in designer gowns worth more than Emma's entire savings, while men boasted about stock market conquests as if they were tales of valor. Emma swallowed hard. Miss Emily, I don't think I belong here. Emily placed a hand on her back, her touch as light as a spider's web. Nonsense, dear. You're my guest. Let me introduce you to some friends. She led Emma toward a table where powerful executives and high society figures mingled. One of them, James, CEO of a rising tech empire, raised a glass in greeting. Emily, we thought you'd miss all the fun. Never. Emily purred before turning to Emma with a predatory gleam in her eyes. Allow me to introduce my companion for the evening, Emma, my maid. The silence that followed was thick with disbelief. Your maid, James repeated, amusement flickering across his face. Yes, Emily confirmed, savoring the moment. I thought it would be refreshing to bring someone truly interesting. A few chuckles escaped, forced and awkward. Emma, sensing she was the subject of a joke she didn't fully understand, shifted uneasily. James smirked. Tell me, Emma, what do you think about colonizing Mars? Emma blinked. Well, if they're going to colonize Mars, I suppose they'll need good maids, right? Laughter erupted, this time genuine but cruel. Emily's chest swelled with satisfaction as she watched Emma flounder. One by one, Emily guided Emma through conversations designed to expose her ignorance, technology, art, finance. Each moment deepened Emma's humiliation, and each snide remark was another crack in the timid girl's confidence. At one point, Esteban, a venture capitalist with a reputation for sharp wit, smirked at Emma. Tell me, Emma, what do you think the future of AI in domestic service will be? Emma swallowed. I guess if they can cook rice and serve it without spilling, that'd be something. The laughter was thunderous. As the night wore on and alcohol loosened tongues, the mockery became less subtle. Emma, exhausted from the relentless barrage, finally excused herself to the restroom. Emily watched her retreating figure with a smirk, but something unexpected stirred in her chest. A flicker of doubt? Before she could dwell on it, a commanding voice interrupted. Emily, Paul, her father's biggest rival, spoke, his tone unreadable. "Your choice of guest tonight is interesting." Emily turned with her perfected socialite grin. "Why, Uncle Paul? I do enjoy surprising people." Paul's gaze sharpened. "Is that what you call it? Because from where I stand, this looks like an exercise in cruelty." Emily's smile wavered for the first time that evening. Before she could respond, murmurs spread like wildfire. The air in the ballroom shifted. A figure had entered. Alfred, a legend, a titan of industry, the one man even billionaires revered. He strode in, his mere presence commanding attention. Every eye turned to him, including Emily's, her heart pounding. He moved straight toward them. Paul greeted him warmly, but Alfred's sharp gaze was fixed elsewhere on Emma, who had just re-emerged from the restroom, her face freshly washed, her posture straightener. Emily's lips parted, ready to deliver her final blow. "Mr. Alfred, allow me to introduce—" "Emma," Alfred interrupted, his voice warm. "It's an honor to finally meet you." Silence. The ballroom held its breath. Emma's brows furrowed. I don't understand." Alfred smiled. "I believe you do." And then it happened. One by one, guests stood. Then in groups. A slow, building wave of movement until the entire room was on its feet. Applause. Deafening. Emma's breath hitched. Murmurs spread rapidly. Whispers of recognition, disbelief, awe. "She's the unknown angel." "No, it can't be." Emily felt the world tilt. "What are they talking about?" she hissed. Emma met her gaze, and for the first time, Emily saw not a meek, foolish girl, but a force of quiet strength. "It's time the truth came out," Emma said, her voice steady. She turned to face the crowd. "Yes," she declared, her words striking like a thunderclap. "I am the unknown angel." Gasps. Shocked. Emily's breath caught in her throat, because she knew exactly who the unknown angel was, the elusive, mysterious philanthropist who had changed countless lives, the one who had quietly outshone every billionaire in the room. And Emma was her. Emily felt her perfect world shatter into pieces. Emma, once the joke, was now the legend. And Emily? Emily was just another nameless face in the crowd. The room fell into an almost eerie silence. The only sound was the gentle clinking of glasses as servers moved through the sea of stunned guests. Emily's smirk barely concealed the anticipation bubbling inside her. This was it, the grand finale to her perfectly orchestrated joke. She turned with a flourish, her voice carrying the practiced confidence of someone who had never been questioned. "Mr. Alfred," she said smoothly, "allow me to introduce my special guest for the evening. This is Emma, my maid." The weight of the statement hung in the air like an executioner's axe. All eyes turned toward Emma, who stood just inside the grand ballroom's entrance. Her ill-fitting dress clung to her modest frame, her fingers nervously gripping the fabric. The soft glow of the chandeliers reflected in the fresh sheen of water on her face, a clear indication that she had just returned from the restroom, where she had fought to hold herself together. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then applause. At first, it was hesitant, a few polite claps from the corners of the room, but it swelled like a tidal wave, rolling through the guests until the entire hall was standing. Emma blinked, her breath hitching as whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. "The unknown angel," someone gasped. "No, it can't be." "She's real," another murmured in awe. Emily's victorious smirk wavered. What was happening? The room was supposed to be filled with mockery and hushed laughter. Not this reverence, this admiration. Alfred, ever the composed titan of industry, stepped forward, a small knowing smile tugging at his lips. "Emma," he said, extending a hand, "it is an honor to finally meet you." Emma hesitated for only a second before placing her hand in his. "The honor is mine, Mr. Alfred." Her voice was no longer meek. It was steady, controlled. Emily felt the ground beneath her shift. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Paul, her father's biggest rival and one of the most respected men in the business world, laughed heartily. I should have known, he mused, shaking his head. You always had an eye for true brilliance, Alfred. Confusion clawed at Emily's chest. Wait, she stammered, stepping forward. What is happening? What are you all talking about? Alfred turned to her, his sharp gaze piercing through the layers of arrogance she had worn like armor for years. You didn't know. He chuckled softly, though there was no amusement in his eyes. Emma isn't just your maid, Emily. She is one of the most influential philanthropists in the country. The air was sucked from the room. The weight of the revelation crashed over Emily like a tidal wave. No, that's not possible, she whispered, her mind scrambling for an explanation. She's just a... Emma's soft, but firm voice cut through her like a blade. A maid. She tilted her head slightly, a small smile playing on her lips. Yes, I am, and I am proud of it. Murmurs filled the air as more guests pieced together the truth. The elusive, mysterious benefactor who had been behind countless charitable acts, the one the media had called the unknown angel. It had been Emma all along. Alfred addressed the crowd, his voice rich with admiration. A few years ago, Emma was recognized as one of the top young entrepreneurs in the country. She had it all: wealth, power, prestige. But one day, she walked away from it. She chose a different path, one that allowed her to give back in a way no one expected. Emily's breath came in short gasps. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. The guests who had looked down on Emma mere hours ago now swarmed her, showering her with gratitude. Your donations saved my hometown's community center. A woman gushed. You funded my research when no one else would. A man added, his voice thick with emotion. Emma accepted their thanks with quiet grace. Then, as if sensing the weight of Emily's shame, she turned, her expression unreadable. She stepped closer, and for the first time, Emily truly looked at her, not as a pawn in some cruel game, but as a person. Why? Emily's voice cracked. Why did you even come tonight, knowing what I was trying to do? Emma studied her for a moment before answering. Because sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected places. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. I don't understand. Emma's smile was kind. You will. The night that had begun as Emily's triumph had turned into the lesson of a lifetime. And for the first time, she realized, maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as powerful as she thought she was. And Emma had never needed power at all. She had something far greater: respect. Emma stood in the grand ballroom, feeling the weight of 100 judging eyes. Her dress, a borrowed and ill-fitting piece, clung to her uncomfortably, but she lifted her chin. She had been humiliated enough for one night, but something inside her had shifted. Emily had orchestrated this cruel joke, parading her around as an unworthy guest at this extravagant gala. But Emma was done playing the fool. A sudden hush spread across the room as Alfred, the legendary investor and philanthropist, stepped forward. His silver-streaked hair and piercing gaze commanded the attention of even the most powerful people in the industry. He looked from Emily to Emma, his expression unreadable. Emma, Alfred said, extending his hand with a warm smile. It is an honor to finally meet you. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Murmurs spread like wildfire. The unknown angel, someone whispered. Is it really her? Emily's confidence faltered. What are you talking about? She demanded, her voice tight with unease. She's just a maid. Emma turned to face Emily, her eyes steady. No, Emily, she said, her voice strong and clear. I am the unknown angel. The room collectively held its breath. Alfred nodded in confirmation. Years ago, Emma was one of the top young entrepreneurs in this country, a prodigy in philanthropy. But she chose to step away from wealth, living simply, dedicating her life to those who truly need help. The weight of his words crashed down on Emily like a collapsing house of cards. The girl she had belittled and mocked was not just anyone. She was someone who had quietly, selflessly changed countless lives. Emma's generosity, Alfred continued, has funded schools, hospitals, and shelters. Her donation saved the art center, provided resources for clean energy research, and gave thousands a chance at a better life. And yet, she never sought recognition. A standing ovation erupted. The very people who had sneered at Emma hours ago were now clapping, admiration shining in their eyes. Tears pricked Emily's vision. The shame was suffocating. I didn't mean to," she stammered, unable to find the words. Emma stepped forward, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder, a gesture of understanding Emily knew she didn't deserve. "I know," Emma said softly, "but tonight there's a lesson for all of us. True wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in kindness, in the difference we make." Alfred gave Emily a long, assessing look. "You made a grave mistake tonight, but growth is always possible if you're willing to change." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. I want to learn, to help, to do things differently." Emma's smile was kind. "Then we start tomorrow. At your house. As I suggested, there's something therapeutic about cleaning and seeing the difference it makes, quite literally." Emily let out a shaky breath. "I would love that." That night, the party ended not with empty luxury, but with a newfound sense of purpose. The legend of the unknown angel spread beyond the ballroom, inspiring many to reconsider what true success really meant. Emily, once blinded by privilege, spent hours talking with her parents that night. For the first time, they truly listened to each other, to their regrets, to their hopes for a different kind of legacy. And the next morning, as promised, Emily arrived at her own home, ready to work beside Emma. They weren't just cleaning a house, they were cleansing their lives, making room for something better. A fresh start, a new beginning, a towel softer than anything she had ever touched in her life. Emma considered her options. She could simply leave, call a taxi, and return to the quiet safety of her small home. But something inside her resisted that idea. She had promised Emily she would attend the party, and Emma was a woman of her word, no matter the circumstances. With a deep breath, she stood up straight, adjusted the bow of her dress as best as she could, and prepared to return to the lavish ballroom. She might not belong here, but she would face the night with dignity. While Emma fought her internal battle in the restroom, Emily was the center of attention, basking in the admiration of the wealthy and powerful. She thrived on the applause, on the way eyes followed her every move. "Emily." A voice interrupted her moment of triumph. It was Paul, her father's greatest rival in the tech world. Paul was everything Emily's parents despised: intelligent, charismatic, and worst of all, beloved by his employees and competitors alike. "Paul." Emily greeted him with a carefully practiced smile, one that barely reached her eyes. "Always a pleasure to see you." Paul glanced around the room, then back at her. "I must say, your choice of company tonight is interesting." Emily smirked. "I enjoy surprising people." Paul's gaze hardened. "Is that what you're doing? Because from where I'm standing, it looks more like you're humiliating a girl who doesn't understand why she's here." Emily's smile faltered for the first time that night. "Don't be dramatic, Paul. I'm merely introducing Emma to a world she'd never see without me. Isn't that generous?" Paul sighed. "Generous? No, Emily. This," he gestured toward the glittering crowd, "isn't generosity. This is cruelty wrapped in silk." Before Emily could respond, a murmur rippled through the room. Heads turned toward the grand entrance. A tall man, around 75, entered, his silver-streaked hair slicked back. He wore a tailored suit, not ostentatious, but radiating wealth and power. Alfred, the legendary investor, the man who had built and broken more fortunes than anyone in the industry. Even the most arrogant CEOs in the room straightened in his presence. Emily felt her mouth go dry. Paul turned to Alfred and extended his hand. "Mr. Alfred, it's always an honor." "Paul, my boy," Alfred greeted warmly, though his tone held an unspoken authority. "Good to see you. How's that clean energy project you told me about?" Paul launched into an enthusiastic explanation, but Alfred's attention shifted. His piercing eyes landed on Emily. "And you must be Emily," Alfred said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about you." Emily smiled, masking her nerves. "I hope it's all been good, Mr. Alfred." Alfred's smile held mystery. I've heard all sorts of things. And then, as if summoned, Emma reappeared from the crowd. Her face was calm, but there was something different in her posture, something steady, unshaken. She was done playing along. Emily smirked, sensing her moment. Mr. Alfred, allow me to introduce my special guest for the evening. She turned toward the crowd dramatically. This is Emma, my maid. A hush fell over the room. Even the background music seemed to fade. Emma stood still, absorbing the weight of 100 stares. Then, slowly, Alfred smiled. But it wasn't the cold amusement Emily expected. It was warm, genuine. Alfred extended his hand. It is an honor to finally meet you, Emma. Emily blinked. Finally, confused whispers spread across the crowd. The unknown angel. It's her. Is this really happening? Emily's stomach dropped. What are they talking about? She whispered. Emma turned to her, her expression unreadable. I think it's time for the truth. A sharp breath filled the room as Emma lifted her chin and said the words that would change everything. Yes, I am the unknown angel. Gasps filled the air. The mysterious philanthropist who had anonymously donated millions for years, the legend debated in the press, whose true identity had never been uncovered. A maid. Emily felt the floor shift beneath her. But you clean houses. Emma's lips curled into a knowing smile. Yes, and I'm proud of it. Alfred stepped forward, his presence commanding. Emma was once one of the top young entrepreneurs in this country, he announced, named among the top 5 rising stars in business. But one day she walked away. Choose to live simply, to work with her hands, and to give everything she had to those who needed it most. The room erupted. Famous actors, CEOs, and politicians who had ignored Emma all night now rushed to her. Your donations saved my company, a businessman said breathlessly. You built schools in my village, a woman whispered, tears in her eyes. Emily felt herself shrinking. Her perfectly planned moment of humiliation had collapsed. And now she was the villain. Emma turned to her, expression softening. Emily, she said gently, do you understand why I accepted your invitation tonight? Emily looked down, ashamed. Why? She whispered. Emma's voice was warm. Because kindness isn't about status. Because dignity isn't about wealth. And because sometimes we all need to be reminded of what truly matters. Emily swallowed, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry. Alfred placed a hand on her shoulder. We can't change the past, Emily, but we can choose who we become next. Emily looked up at him, her eyes damp with unshed tears. I want to learn, to do better. Emma smiled. Then let's start. Tomorrow morning, at your house. Emily hesitated. You mean cleaning? Emma chuckled. You'd be surprised what you can learn from honest work. For the first time that night, Emily truly smiled. All right, I think I have a lot to learn. As the gala ended, Emily left not as the queen of the evening, but as a student of humility. The story of the millionaire maid, the unknown angel, and the arrogant heiress would become legend. A reminder that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the kindness we give to others. How did you like this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to catch all our stories. For more emotional tales, click here on the end screen.